Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I want to begin this morning by, again, publicly thanking the men and women of the Atlanta Police Department for the work that they continue to do to keep our communities safe. This year has been, I'm sure, one of the most challenging years in the history of law enforcement in our country. And even with all of those challenges, the men and women of APD continue to show up each and every day. The vast majority show up each and every day with respect and regard for our communities, wanting to have positive interactions with our communities and wanting to return home safely to their families, as well as sending people whom they may encounter back home safely to their families as well. So I can't say that enough. And I appreciate the leadership that has been given in the most challenging of times this year. We are here again on the heels of another child in our city being shot and killed. I remember when I was growing up, my best friend Janae's mother, Mrs. Carter, would say, "Stray bullets know no names." And for the third time as mayor, I am standing here to talk about a bullet that took the life of a child in our city. And as we've talked about what I describe as this COVID crime wave, people have asked me if it's possible that I could get up and give a Friday night speech, reminiscent of the one that I gave May 29th. If only it were that simple. If it were that simple, I would give a speech every single day. But it is not that simple. The reality is this: there are too many guns on our streets and too many people in our communities who don't have regard for basic human life. You all covered my state of the city. In the state of the city, I made several announcements, putting an additional 250 officers on the street, expanding technology through the use of cameras, increasing the number of license plate readers in our communities. We announced just this week the One Atlanta Light Up the Night initiative, adding 10,000 lights on our streets to help make our communities safer. President Biden mentioned when he visited Georgia on Thursday that I personally asked for money in the American Rescue Fund for our cities so that we could expand violence interruption, violence prevention programs throughout this country. $5 billion was put into the American Rescue Plan, and I'm grateful for that. Despite the fact that APD has removed 2,000 guns from our streets and arrested more than 700 violent offenders, it's still not enough. And at some point, the responsibility has to be taken by all of us. APD responds to crime. You all have heard me say that a man was shot in his driveway, not 2 doors down from my home, where a police car stays 24 hours a day. He was shot and killed in his garage by someone who had an issue with him. So it is not enough that we have officers on every corner. APD this weekend had just shown up to a big fight between juveniles that apparently moved to another location, and an innocent person was killed. And I wish that I could wave a magic wand or give some speech to make it stop. But until we address the number of guns in the hands of criminals on our street, and if I could do it from the city level alone, I would. But until our state leaders take a look at the most lax gun laws that we have in this country and the way that guns get into the hands of criminals, until that happens, I am so sad to say that this likely will not be the last time I stand here. I said to my 19-year-old son this weekend, every time my phone goes off and I receive that notification about a shooting in our city, I said, each time you don't answer the phone when I call you, you are taking years off of my life. Because when I get that notification, I don't know whose child it is. I don't know whose husband or wife it is. So like every other person in this city who has someone they love in this city, I began making calls, beginning with looking for my children to make sure they are safe. So you can say what you want to say about what you believe to be my deficits. People are entitled to their opinions, but don't ever question whether or not I care. My love for this city is deeper than probably many others standing here, because my family goes back 100 years in this city. So whether I am mayor of this city or not, I'm going to do everything that I can possibly do to keep our community safe. So we're going to do more today, beginning with announcing a working group that will be represented from people across this city. It will be a small working group, but I am going to ask this group to give me recommendations in the next 30 to 45 days, short-term recommendations on what more we can possibly do. We've announced a job training program, employing 1,000 kids this summer. With the money in the American Rescue Fund, potentially we can do even more, helping to employ kids, sending them out to work with small businesses that perhaps can't afford to pay people to work in their businesses. But if there's more we can do, I'm asking this working group to give us recommendations, and also asking them for 90-day recommendations for long-term plans that perhaps will go beyond what we are already doing. There's also been a lot of discussion on whether or not Rodney Bryant serving as interim has something to do with crime in our city. Now, I think that it is a ludicrous conversation, because this COVID crime wave is being experienced across the country. But let me tell you what I know about Rodney Bryant. When I was a city council member, he was my zone commander. I got to know him. I got to know how he cares for our communities, how he works alongside our communities, how he responded to our communities. I saw it firsthand. So after 30 years, when he took a well-deserved retirement, when we needed someone to step in as interim corrections chief, I asked him to come back. And you know what he said? He said, I will do whatever I can do to help this city, Mayor. If you need me back, I will come back. On May 29th, when this city literally was burning, I called Chief Bryant and I said, please come and take over the Joint Operation Command Center, because I knew what he had done when he was deputy chief and the role he played. He said, Mayor, whatever you need me to do, I love this city, whatever you need me to do. When it was time for me to appoint him as interim chief, he again said, I will serve for as long as you need me to serve whatever you need me to do. I love this city. So I don't want there to be any question on whether or not I have confidence in the leadership of Chief Bryant. So while I know the men and women of this department respect him and they know him, whether his title is interim or permanent, he's still showing up and he's leading every day. But I want to remove this from the conversation. So for those of you who believe that naming him as a permanent chief will make a difference in crime in our city, I am naming him as permanent chief today. I'm going to put his name forth to City Council and ask that they confirm him immediately. And after the election, when all of the political theater is over, whether I am mayor or whomever is mayor, if it is appropriate to launch a national search at that time, then that decision can be made at that time. So I want to remove this from the discussion. And if this naming of this capable, able, solid leader as permanent chief will help with crime in the city, we're going to use every tool we have in our toolbox. And I ask that City Council join me in confirming him. And again, after the election, when the theatrics of the political season are over, this can be revisited. I've had this conversation with Chief Bryant. He said, Mayor, whatever it is that best serves this city is what I am willing to do. So, again, I hope and pray this is the last time I have to stand here to talk about a child being killed in our city, 15-year-old Diamond Johnson. But I want us to all take a deep and long look at what, if anything, more we can do. And if you have some suggestions, and don't give back to me what we are already doing. I don't need a repeat of what's being done and what's being contemplated. If you have something new, give it to me. Because we'll look at it and we'll determine if it will help with the crime that we are experiencing in our city. There were multiple shootings over the weekend. We're not even in summertime yet. And we know what summertime often brings in terms of crime. So I am going to ask Chief Bryant and his team to share additional details on that, and then I will come back and I will be happy to address any questions that you all may have.